Coming up on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, we do a game-by-game recap from Week 6 and the impact it will have on waiver wires and what players we should trade for and away, starting right now on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, Sky Guasco, Skyguasco. We got a rare midweek quad box, folks. The old quad box, so popular on Sundays. It's in high demand, so we're bringing it back midweek. We got Bob Lamarco, of course, at Bobby Lamarco, Matty Styles at Styles08, and, of course, Derek Favret, Derek_Favret. We are going to combine, essentially, our Monday and Tuesday shows to get as much information packed early in the week as possible. We've heard some feedback through the Raz Fantasy Sphere and want to make sure we're getting you as much information as possible before waivers. I will still have my trade article dropping Wednesday morning per usual. Derek has his article coming out. Matt has his article dropping already on Tuesdays per usual, and Bob does as well. But we're going to combine all that early this week, try a new format for you. So please leave a comment below. If you're listening on the podcast side, of course, download the podcast and subscribe there. Leave a comment and let us know how you feel about the new format. And, of course, on the YouTube channel, you can let us know there as well. Hit that subscribe button and the link below so you don't miss anything. We'll go around the horn very quickly. Maddie, let us know what you can find with your article. We're going to dive into your waivers here in a second. But what can we expect on Sunday mornings?
Sunday mornings, the quad box. The four of us will be talking about starts, sits, trades, whatever questions come from our followers. I will apologize to the folks that follow my article. We had a glitch this afternoon and the article went out late. So comments are coming in. I will stay up as long as two things. My wife tells me I can keep playing on my phone. And number two, that my old ass can stay awake answering questions today. And we have a new record. Last week, week 6 waiver, 113 questions. Derek, over to you. I'm done bragging. Humble brags out of the way.
Hey, I love it. Derek, what can we expect from you this week?
Yeah, well, you can't expect 113, but you will get my 5 things to know for week 7. We've got some buys this week, so look for my article later this week. Glad to be here with all 4 of you, like our Sunday show. This is great.
I love it.
Spend Tuesday night.
And, boss, how about yourself? What are we looking at for me this week?
Well, I'm updating the charts tonight, the slot versus wide points per game allowed. So that'll be up and running tonight, probably first thing tomorrow morning. So go check out football.razzball.com. That fantasy data tab with all the slot versus wide data is great. Same thing with the adjusted line yards matchup metric. Later in the week, we'll break down fantasy starts and sits for wide receivers and running backs. And then Friday, of course, we have our matchup show, which is awesome and fun. We do the slot versus wide matchup show every Friday. So join us at 5:00 p.m. PST.
Love that. All right, boys, let's jump into it. We got a lot to cover, of course. We got 4 different categories per, again, combining those 2 episodes. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with game recaps. We're going to get into the matchup takeaways. Bob's going to lead us through those. Player takeaways, so specific things that we saw per a player or 2. Derek will handle that. Matt's going to join us with the waiver wire ads and the drops. And, of course, you can find that in his article already live on football.razzball.com. And where I see fit, we'll have a trade for or trade away candidate as well. So let's jump right into it. We'll do the best we can. And gentlemen, I got so much going on in the back end, so please help me out with comments tonight. If somebody could just cut me off anytime it's relevant. If we get comments, please just let me know, and you can pull up on the screen. So let's get right into it here. We have our fantasy recaps. We'll start again on Thursday night. Dial it all the way back. Chiefs 19, Denver Broncos 9. Patrick Mahomes under 10 fantasy points the last 3 games. Russell Wilson somehow QB 10, and Jerry Jeudy droppable ? He's the wide receiver 68 in PPR. We have 3 Bronco wide receivers ahead of him right now in fantasy football. Bob, we'll kick it off with you. What are the matchup takeaways from this one?
Well, I think the first thing that stands out is the Denver Broncos obviously being a complete, dumpster fire when it comes to tight end defense. And Travis Kelce, of course, is Travis Kelce. But even prior to that, they've allowed the most fantasy points to tight ends. And this is definitely a matchup we're going to want to exploit moving forward. Tyler Conklin had 4 for 67. Cole Kmet, 7 for 85 and 2. Okay, Cole Kmet looks like Travis Kelce out there. So the schedule, of course, this weekend, we'll talk a little bit later about waiver wire and stuff like that, but Luke Musgrave and the Packers get them this week, so he could definitely be on the streamer radar. Then they get Travis Kelce a bye, and then the Bills tight ends, maybe Dalton Kincaid is back and take advantage of that. Derek, did you see anything from a player side in this game that stood out to you?
Yeah, I was really paying attention to the Broncos backfield. Javonte Williams was back after his game miss with the hip injury. And of course, McLaughlin, he just burst onto the scene a couple weeks ago, and he looked real good. So, fantasy-wise, we were really wondering what this breakdown was going to be. Well, it was generally pretty even. McLaughlin had 41% snap share to Williams 35. They ran McLaughlin had 11 routes, but only 7 rushing attempts, where Javonte had 10 rushing attempts, 52. So fantasy-wise, they scored about the same. I think just on visual, Javonte looked strong. He looked good, and I kind of see him starting to take back over the majority of the carries. It won't be 75-25 anymore, but he'll probably get the majority of the carries moving forward, I think. What I really saw was Perine's role was reduced, and so it really looks to me like it's going to shape out to Williams being the primary back and McLaughlin cutting into what the Perine role is what we saw. What'd you see, Matt, in that game?
I was watching one guy in particular, and that was Rashee Rice. In my opinion, and just passing the eye test, he has separated himself as the best wide receiver option in Kansas City. He would have been my ad of the week if it had not been for, spoiler alert, Christian McCaffrey getting injured. Sorry, Sky, we brought it up early before we actually got to that game. But Rashee Rice would be my number one add and hold guy, whereas the replacements for McCaffrey could be a 1-week hold, could be a 2-week super deep handcuff. But Rashee Rice went 4 for 70 plus. He was targeted in the end zone. It didn't work out. But I will tell you what, he passes the eye test as a catch and run guy. He's also clearing the way for Travis Kelce, that's what I noticed big time, is they're running routes where Rashee Rice is getting followed, leaving Kelce open. I don't understand how defenses just leave Travis Kelce alone, but that was what happened. Once they started to focus on Kelce, then Rice started to get a little bit more attention from the quarterback. The one fearful thing that I have is that Andy Reid is not afraid to throw it to anybody and everybody. So he's not going to get stuck in any type of rut. But my wide receiver out of the week and hold and wait for his blow up, which is coming, is Rashee Rice. Sky, obviously you watched that game. We all watched it. What did you think of Rashee Rice's get off speed?
Yeah, I like Rashee Rice a lot. And as far as the trade for or away, I'm not going to have somebody for every single game. The way I'm trying to designate that is Matt is working with about a 60 to 70% rostership for the players he's looking to add. On the other side, I'm also considering that with the players that I'm looking to roster as well. So Rashee Rice, right, is not rostered enough for me to mention him in a trade. But if he's in your league and you'd like to go get him, then I think he's a great player. Jerry Jeudy, I guess, would be the player to trade away. As I just mentioned, wide receiver 68, but he might be droppable at this point, so I don't think anybody's going to be necessarily taking him on. All right, boys, let's move on here to the Atlanta Falcons, Washington Commanders. Commanders get the win on the road here, 24-16. Desmond Ridder, QB4. We had Howell as QB5, Pitts and Jonnu Smith, tight end 3 and 4, respectively, in week 6. So we had plenty to go around for both those teams. We talked about it on Sunday. We had Ridder and Howell as our streamers, and finally, Kyle Pitts had that breakout game 3 years later we've all been looking forward to. So, Bob, what do you see in the matchup category for this one?
Yeah, it's got to be Commanders against posing number 1 wide receivers, especially on the perimeter. Drake London, 9 for 125 in this game. Previous weeks, DJ Moore, A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, but even Cortland Sutton had a very big game. So this is definitely a matchup I want to target. Now the question comes, we have the Giants this week. First game. Is it Darius Slayton? Most likely, yes. Could he be a wide receiver 3? Probably could be on that radar this week if you need him. Then they have the Eagles, Patriots, and Seattle. So maybe there is some potential for a trade for a guy like Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Patriots, Kendrick Bourne just had a monster game with 10 for 89. So that's another name to monitor as well. Anything from a player perspective that you saw, Derek?
Yeah, guys, show of hands. Do we trust Kyle Pitts yet against the Giants next week?
Trust Trust is tough, but at this point, it's kind of hard not to play him.
Yeah, we got to be optimistic. 54% snap share yesterday, 33 routes, 6 targets, 4 for 43, and a touchdown. So 11 targets the previous week. So he's got back-to-back double-digit fantasy points week. Good matchup against the Giants. I don't know about trust. I think that's a strong word. He hasn't earned that yet, but optimism, I think, is there for him, especially this coming week. Matt, what about you? Waiver wire ad drops from this game?
Yeah, let me address your question that you posed there, but I'm only going to address it to Sky. Sky, currently, who is the best tight end for the Atlanta Falcons?
Oh, Jonnu Smith, no question.
Okay, so we can move on from Kyle Pitts at this point and pay nothing for Jonnu Smith, who's on basically every waiver wire at this point. So if you need a streamer tight end, he's good. I left him off of my list because I figured that he would be rostered by now, but people aren't really paying attention to the Falcons. And I wrote in my article, Arthur Smith might be borderline moronic. Why is Bijan Robinson not on the field all the time and getting 80% of the snaps and letting Tyler Algier come in to give him a breather? That I don't know. You draft the guy so high and they're just not giving the ball to him. I don't get it. But my ad of the week from this game is Sam Howell, right? You said it's Sky coming in at quarterback 5. He didn't throw for a ton of yards, but he got into the end zone 3 times. So in a 6-point touchdown league, he was fantastic. And we're going through bye week number 3? Number 3, yeah. And we've got 6 quarterbacks that are going to be out. Not all of them fantastic, but they're starters nonetheless. So I like Sam Howell to sneak in as a good streaming option moving into week 7.
I like that. Don't really have a player to trade away per se, but I'm moving away from Jahan Dotson. Either way, love the kid. I think he's a hold in dynasty and redraft value. It's just not happening. Terry McLaurin has some beat up games. He destroys the Giants. So I like that matchup coming up, but not feeling Jahan Dotson, unfortunately. All right, boys, moving on to game 3 here. We got the Minnesota Vikings getting the road win against the Chicago Bears. 19-13. Justin Fields, thumb injury, doubtful for this week in week 7. Bob, ugly game for the Bears. Again, no Justin Jefferson for the Vikings. The Vikings get a much-needed win here to stay competitive. What are the takeaways?
The biggest one for me is the improvement of the Bears' run D. Obviously, we saw Alexander Mattison, 18 carries for just 44 yards, and it made me think, all right, is this a new thing? Well, it hasn't been. If you look at the previous weeks, Brian Robinson, who's been running like a madman, 6 carries for 10 yards. Then you also have the Denver Broncos, who had 15 carries for 84 yards in that game. But that game was all McLaughlin, 7 for 72. The other RBs went 8 carries for 12 yards. So maybe the Bears are more vulnerable to speed backs like McLaughlin versus those normal power backs like Brian Robinson. So I think that's extremely notable. However, the one caveat is they do allow a lot of receptions to running back. So if you have a pass catching running back, maybe it's not much of a fade. Schedule coming up, Josh Jacobs. Then you got Eckler, Alvin Kamara, and then the Panthers. So maybe Josh Jacobs is a fade. Maybe Miles Sanders is a fade upcoming here. But what about you, Derek? Any player takeaways from this matchup?
Yeah, I'm going to stay right there in that Vikings backfield. A few weeks back, he had the Vikings trading for Cam Akers, and we were just counting the weeks when he was going to start cutting into Madison's snap totals. Well, we're still counting because, although he only got 44 yards rushing, he had the second most snaps and the second most carries of the season the Sunday versus the Bears. And he had the second most targets on the team with Jefferson out. So if there's any continued worry about Madison's snap share being cut into by Cam, I think we can just put that one to rest. Matt, what about you?
For me, more on the Bears side, right? Bob, I don't know if you have a 40 anywhere close. I know Sky does, but we try not to get him to bring too many out. Bob, did you want to pour anything out for the Justin Fields thumb injury? I mean, how are we handling that?
I can't have nice things. I also had CMC, so that was a good dynamic duo right there. But yeah, thanks, Matt, for bringing that up. But yeah, you can get into your waiver wires now. I'm not really trying to talk about Fields.
So I think Dante Foreman looked good, not great, right? He had 64 yards rushing against a not so great Minnesota offense. The key was volume. He got volume, which tells me that if Roschon Johnson has cleared concussion protocol and he's trending in that direction, that's the best ad, right? I would keep Foreman if you can stash him. because Khalil Herbert is out at minimum another 3 weeks. I like Roshan Johnson averaging 4.9 yards a clip. So he would be my ad. Most likely he's not available. But if somebody got frustrated last week, dropped him because that was 2 weeks concussion protocol, then Roshan might be the guy to sneak onto your roster overnight.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I'm wanting to make sure that I regather some of those players. We talk about it every week, folks. Now that we're in bye weeks, check your rosters for who might have been dropped, bigger names that might get dropped because they need room for players. My trade away for this game is going to be Cole Kmet, and I'm really bummed about this. 2 weeks ago, I had him in my trade 4 article. I felt great about that after a breakout game against the Denver Broncos, but as we saw, they're kind of giving it up to everybody. Cole Kmet was the number 1 tight end on the week. I came back against a tough matchup versus the Commanders. He was tight end 9. He caught a touchdown, 5 for 5 for 42. Feel really good about it. Last week in a plus matchup, 3 targets, 1 catch, 9 single yards, 31, tight end 31. Raiders, Chargers, Saints coming up. Raiders are 14th against tight ends. Chargers and Saints are 24th and 25th, toughest matchups. So we don't want any of that without Justin Fields. I'm not confident about this offense in general, and certainly not Cole Kmet. So hopefully you can move off of him. Cole Kmet for Jonnu Smith, I would make a swap directly if you're able to do that. Let's move on here to the Cincinnati Bengals and the Seattle Seahawks. Cincinnati gets the big win at home, 17-13. They bounced back in a big way. They started 1-3. They're now 3-3. Seattle coming off the bye couldn't get it done. Cincinnati is one of the 6 teams on bye this week. Cincinnati Bengals, Houston Texans, Carolina Panthers, New York Football Jets, Tennessee Titans, and the Dallas Cowboys all on a bye this week. The Bengals, though, have the 49ers on the road when they come back from bye. Buffalo at home, Houston at home, at Baltimore, the next 4. So I'm curious how confident we are about this Bengals team overall. But Bob, we'll start with you with the takeaways from the game.
Well, the first thing we hammered home on the Sunday live show, and a shout out to all of us on this, was fading Joe Mixon against that Seattle run D. And it's honestly not Joe Mixon thing. It's a Seattle run D thing. You fade running backs against Seattle. They have been absolutely dominant. Joe Mixon, 12 carries for 38 yards. The previous weeks, Miles Sanders, 9 for 24. The Giants RBs, 18 for 39. David Montgomery at the time, 16 for 67. We're like, oh, they're not that good. Well, now you watch David Montgomery when he plays a full game is like 125 yards. So the 16 for 67 is something special. The upcoming schedule for the teams playing Seattle's run D, the Cardinals were not. I think if you had to stream one of those guys, it's kind of a mess. Just stay away if you can. Then you have the Browns with Jerome Ford, the Ravens backfield, whatever that's going to be in 2 to 3 weeks. And then, of course, Brian Robinson against the Commanders. But I guess from a overall standpoint, Sky, is there anybody from this game you're kind of looking at from a trade for or away standpoint?
Yeah, I'll go with Joe Mixon. You just nailed it on the head there. DK Metcalf is another player that I'm concerned about. I'm a big Mojo Clubhouse guy, and DK Metcalf is not happy in Seattle for a number of reasons. He's getting way too many personal conduct penalties, shoving guys unnecessarily, taking out his frustration. Tyler Lockett remains quiet and consistent. We all love that. So I'm concerned about Joe Mixon on the Bengals side, and I'm concerned about DK Metcalf. Also, DK just straight up isn't getting it done the last handful of weeks. And Geno Smith, as I mentioned preseason, has turned into a pumpkin. So worried about both of those guys moving forward. But Derek, what did you take away from the player takeaway situation?
Yeah, so last time we saw the Seahawks, we were concerned that Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet were splitting carries. And so when they went on bye, we were wondering what we were going to get when we came out of that. Well, we got 76% of the snaps going to Kenny Walker this time, most snaps of the year, 53 total, up from 35 and 36 before the bye. So I think that the question's been answered. As long as he stays healthy, he's a number 1 starting running back, and he's got the 30th ranked Arizona Cardinals up next. So if you're running with Kenny Walker, run with confidence.
Yeah, I don't really have a waiver name, and I will give Bob credit. I think Bob started our mix and fade on Sunday, so I wasn't necessarily on board until I listened to some of the statistics Bob presented. So if Bob, if you were the guy, tip of the cap to you. If Sky, if you were the guy, you probably got the info from Bob. With that info being said, I just say you got to keep riding Burrow and Chase. It's going to happen. It will continue to happen. I can't figure it out, but I will tell you what, I would go down with the ship with Burrow and Chase. If you have Chase, I would go trade for Joe Burrow. I know, Sky, you're the trade guy, but tell me what you think about that. I think that it has to get better. It can't get worse. So, I mean, is now a buy low Joe Burrow time?
Absolutely. If you can still buy low, I think you can, because all three of these guys got somewhat tampered. Honestly, Tyler Boyd was the most effective wide receiver. So shout out to Bob from 3 years ago for the Tyler Boyd love. But T. Higgins coming back as well, which we love. And we just mentioned that Joe Mixon is maybe getting the workload, but not having the efficiency. So with, as the tide rises, all ships rise, right? So I like that for Joe Burrow. Let's move on to the next game here. We're going to make this one really quick, gentlemen. The Cleveland Browns upset the San Francisco 49ers 19-17. Number of injuries, as we had mentioned already, for the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, oblique. He's day-to-day. Should probably play. It's more of a pain tolerance. Deebo Samuel, shoulder, should also play Monday night against the Minnesota Vikings. And Trent Williams, left with an ankle, returned as well. So those three guys were big leaves, obviously, for the Niners, but they should all play Monday night, if not miss a week max there. So I personally am not very concerned about those kind of guys. But Bob, how we feel about this secondary for the Browns, which, look, to their credit, I'm just being lame because I'm a Niners guy. The Browns straight up showed up, and Jim Schwartz straight up has Kyle Shanahan's number. There's no way around that.
Well, first question I have for you, Sky, is are you starting Brock Purdy with confidence against Minnesota next week?
With confidence, no, but I don't think he's a tight end. I mean, I'll just cut right to it. He's a trade-away candidate for me. And in single quarterback leagues, he may not be highly rostered in that capacity, right? Because you have other options to stream. Super flex, though, I'd rather have other options, right? Like Sam Howell has the rushing opportunity. There's other, quarterbacks coming up a little bit. I think Derek Carr is hit or miss. There's some other quarterbacks that might be a better option there. Gardner Minshew looked horrible, but he can have a better upside there too. So I like Brock Purdy a lot. I think it's a fade game. They got caught off guard and they lost. That happens. I think they're going to be fine moving forward. But am I looking to start him with confidence? No. If I don't have other options, yes. But in a single quarterback league, I think you could probably stream better options weekly.
Well, that's fun. All right, because Brock Purdy is unfortunately my quarterback. All right, anyway, so let's get back in. So let's talk about this game. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns, I think, especially when you get into the later part of the year, playing your offenses in Cleveland is probably not a good idea. It's always the sloppy weather games. But my biggest takeaway is that you don't need to fade outside wide receiver ones versus the 49ers. Now, Amari Cooper, with all the situation going on, 4 for 108. He actually outproduced Brandon Ayuk in the same game, in the same weather with PJ Walker. This isn't the first time, though. Marquise Hollywood Brown, 7 for 96. Puka Nacua, 15 for 147. So it's not a matchup to exploit, but it is a matchup if you have a really good receiver. If you have like a wide receiver too, this is not a fade matchup for those kind of guys. We've seen it time again. We have the Vikings this week, KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison. Then you have the Bengals, which we just discussed, buy low. Not worried about Chase at all. Then they have the bye, and then they have the Jags with Calvin Ridley and company. So for this game, Derek, any thoughts about player takeaways heading into week 7?
Yeah, I mean, the big news is going to be all weekend, and up to Monday night is going to be McCaffrey's health and if he's going to play. If you're an owner of McCaffrey, you're probably going to be sweating all weekend. And do I wait till Monday and just risk it, or do I find someone else off the thin wire and I'll pass it to Matt. I think he's got a name to consider. I'm just going to say I'm not as high on this name that Matt's going to talk about, but I think just for the protection, you're going to have to consider him. So with that, Matt, tell us about your ad of the week.
So on our little friendly spreadsheet, we've got somebody changed my typing from Jordan Mason to Justin Mason. And for those of us that are fans of Justin Mason, shout out to the San Francisco kid. We love Justin Mason on this show. Maybe we get him to check in with us sometime. More likely it'll be baseball season. But I like Jordan Mason, and I will update my article, which obviously I can't edit now. I said to spill half your fab. That's when I thought McCaffrey was going to miss extended time. I don't know that that's going to happen now with some of the news that's come out. So I like him as a handcuff, and I like him as a top 15 running back if McCaffrey doesn't play. The issue, as the guys have mentioned, can you wait until Monday night to make that call? Well, you can if you have both McCaffrey and Mason. But if you don't, if you're 6-0, you can take a chance of waiting Monday night and playing McCaffrey if you want. And if he doesn't play, you can go 6-1, or maybe you luck one out. But for me, I like Mason. I like him better than Eli Mitchell right now based on the -3 yards that Mitchell put up. Mason's got touchdowns in 2 games. So Mason's also going to be the garbage time guy if the Niners get out to a lead. Sky, do you think the Niners are able to get out to another lead?
Yeah, I think this game will be a lot closer. And I mean, this game is close, obviously, but Niners had multiple opportunities to win that game, and they just didn't. I think the Vikings are going to, put up points as they do. I disagree with. I think Elijah Mitchell, if he's healthy, he's the number one. We've seen this multiple times over the last couple of years with Jeff Wilson and Carlos Hyde days and stuff. Like, they really like Elijah Mitchell, period. And he hasn't stayed healthy for a long period of time, so we don't see consistency. But he is the number one guy. Jordan Mason's been great, but maybe it's a system situation. Nonetheless, Shanahan outwardly speaks that Elijah Mitchell works that system best, if not Christian McCaffrey. So if I can't get Jordan Mason, who's the hotness right now because he just played, I'm going to get Elijah Mitchell, and he's probably significantly cheaper. So keep an eye on that one as well. All right, let's move on to Houston and the New Orleans Saints. Houston gets a win at home, 20-13. Houston is another one of these teams on a bye. Dameon Pierce, 3 of his 6 games after the bye come against bottom 4 DSTs versus the running back. So those are not positive matchups. We have Denver, Carolina, and Arizona, and he will be, I'm a bit concerned about that. He hasn't exactly shown the prowesses he did last season. So I'm a little bit worried about Dameon Pierce. Maybe we'll talk about him in a second. But, Bob, is there any matchup takeaway in this one?
I think the biggest one for me is that Marshawn Lattimore is no longer a shadow corner. I don't know what changed, but 90% of his snaps have been on one side of the field, and this has led to some really good receivers producing fine for fantasy. The most notable this week was Nico Collins. Not a big game, but 4 for 80, 12 PPR points is wide receiver 2 numbers. That's great. But even previous weeks, Chris Godwin, 8 for 114. Romeo Doubs, 5 for 73 and 1. D-Hop earlier in the year, 7 for 65. So Lattimore is no longer a shadow corner until we see otherwise. So I do think that the upcoming schedule, Calvin Ridley next week. I know he's coming off a down week, but you know how fantasy football works. We're all on a guy one week, and then he'll have a big week the following. So look for Calvin Ridley. Then they have the Colts with Michael Pittman, the Bears with DJ Moore, and then the Vikings with Osborne and Addison. So, Sky, there really isn't many player takeaways from this game, but is there anybody out, on the Houston or Saints side that you're looking to trade away or trade for?
Yeah, I mean, Dameon Pierce is one of those guys, but he's a running back getting touches, so it's hard to let those guys go. An honorable mention for me, I guess, would be Dalton Schultz. And he's a legit trade for candidate, but he's on a bye. And you don't want to spend a lot of capital to get a guy that's on a bye unless he's cheaper right now. But Dalton Schultz, started off the radar completely. Last 3 games, though, guys, he's had a touchdown in each game. And for a tight end, it doesn't matter that he's only had 3, 7, and 4 receptions and less than 65 yards in each match. You score a touchdown, you're basically top 10. You get the yardage, you're up. He's been tight end 6, 6, and 2 in the last matchups. As I mentioned, he has plus matchups coming back. So honorable mention, if you have a spot or you have somebody to throw away in an ad deal, I would look at Dalton Schultz if available there for your trade for candidate for the Houston Texans. Let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. The Gardner Minshew revenge game was not one. I had mentioned on Sunday that I don't really buy into that kind of stuff, although there may be some more incentive. Gardner Minshew got shellacked in this game. 37-20. Jags come out on top. Kirk and Ridley are wide receiver 22 and 23 respectively. So they're literally neck and neck. Calvin Ridley's not the number one. Kirk may not be the number one either, but neither one of them has really come out consistently necessarily. And Travis Etienne, running back 4 overall on the season. We'll see what we have with that backfield there in the Indianapolis. But Bob, why don't we start with you with a matchup takeaway?
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of looking at how the Jags outside versus outside receivers, once again, it was a gold mine. Like we talked about this on our show on Friday. Michael Pittman, we called him one of our main starts, 9 for 109 against that Jacksonville secondary on the outside. Then the previous weeks, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, 6 wide receivers have had 15 PPR points. All of them, there's only been 6 weeks of the season. And those are wide receiver 1 numbers, 5 of 6 games. Only game that the wide receiver 1 didn't have 15 PPR points was Drake London. So this is definitely a matchup we want to keep attacking over and over again. We have the Saints with Chris Olave. Get him in your DFS lineups. Even Michael Thomas could be on the wide receiver 3 map this week. Then you have the Steelers with Deontay Johnson coming back. Also George Pickens. Then they have a bye, and then you have the 49ers looking to bounce back from that tough loss against the Browns. But I know there's a guy that really people want to talk about a lot here is Gardner Minshew. So what are your thoughts about him, Derek, moving forward?
Yeah, with the news that Richardson may be out for the season if he elects for surgery, Minshew's probably your guy. I mean, it was ugly to watch, but he did throw it up 55 times, so volume is key. 329 yards and a touchdown, but yeah, boy, those 3 interceptions and the fumble loss was pretty bad. They've got Cleveland and then New Orleans in the next 2, and it might not get any prettier for a while. But if you need a quarterback or a super flex, he might be worth considering. Sky, what do you think about the Colts receivers? Do you think are they tradeaways now? Are they trade fours like a Pittman or Josh Downs? What do you think?
I think it's probably a buy low. My issue is, again, in the trade category I mentioned earlier, I don't know that, Pittman is, but our boy Josh Downs isn't rostered enough. So I'll kick it to Matt. Matt would probably be the add Josh Downs guy because he's not rostered enough to be a trade candidate. But I think this is actually a buy low for Pittman, who, Derek, you called out a number of times on Sunday. But our boy Josh Downs, a couple weeks late for us, but he's come around in a big way. Derek, Eric, Matt, whichever one you are. Matt, anybody else to add in the waiver column?
Downs for me, especially with not Pittman. Boy, I missed. We probably need to get off this game is what we need to do. Pierce got dinged, so it's Downs for me. But Sky, let me ask you this: what does Gardner Minshew and Vespa have in common?
Something about driving off a cliff. I hope it's not that.
They're both fun to ride until your friends see you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So those friends in your fantasy football league, they want you to ride Gardner Minshew, and they're going to laugh at you. So, Josh Downs would be a deep add. And then I want to go back real quick and tell you that I've got Schultz kind of high on my list for ads because he's going to be cheaper heading into this week 7 bye. You may be able to get him at the Uber discount going into this week. So I'm with you on Dalton Schultz.
I like that. And again, honorable mention for me because he may not even be rostered enough to consider it. So you might be able to pick him up waivers for free. But if he is on a roster, I think you can get him for cheap. Boys, we're halfway through the slot. We got a lot left. Next week's episode will be a lot quicker with 6 teams on bye. But let's take a quick break in the action here. And let's get to Randy, who has a question for us. Let's all read it on the screen. I'll read it out loud. Let's get to a quick trade question, and we will continue on. Trade Gibbs and Flowers for Aaron Jones, assuming health. Also already has Brees, Roschon, Chuba Hubbard, Ford, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Waddle, Devonta Smith, Palmer. This is a 12-team PPR. So we're basically swapping a running back and a wide receiver for Aaron Jones. Matt, I'm going to kick this to you as the intel for the Green Bay Packers. Is Aaron Jones somebody that you're wanting, giving away Gibbs and Flowers if you have the rest of this roster?
With the rest of that roster, absolutely. I do it. I don't even think twice. Now, I would trade away Matt LaFleur, but that's not an option for us. That's the only reason, a little bit of injury with Jones with his hamstring. But if you saw what he did in week 1, he took over that football game and he won the football game for the Packers. This kid is a game changer. He just needs to be on the field more. And Matt LaFleur needs to start scripting up plays for him. And he's an absolute beast when he gets the ball. And let's be honest, Corey Dillon Jr., for the Packers is not getting it done. So they need Aaron Jones. And if you need any more indication that Corey Dillon Jr. is not getting it done, the Packers just signed James Robinson to their practice squad.
Love it.
That James Robinson. So
you mean running back 5 2 years ago, James Robinson? Bob, Any thoughts on this? Gibbs and Flowers or Aaron Jones? Thumbs up.
So in my adjusted line yards matchup metric, we I do have some rest of season stuff, and the Packers are 4th in the metric rest of season. So they have a really good schedule the rest of the way. I would make this deal. You have a lot of studs ahead of him anyway for Zay Flowers. And Gibbs, Dan Campbell is one of those coaches that just likes a certain type of player. And David Montgomery's definitely that player. Craig Reynolds seems to be that player. Gibbs, for some reason, doesn't have that feel yet. So I'm going to take the deal. What about you, Derek?
I'm going to be the counter voice in this. I am not making this deal. I'm looking at these names on his roster, and I see a lot of bye weeks coming up. And, with Montgomery out, if Gibbs comes in healthy, they've got to give him the rock now. They've got to, because we're going to talk about that game here later. But, Gibbs is healthy. He's going to play. We all love Flowers. And so, no, I'm not making that trade, Randy. So I might be the dissenting voice here, but I'm standing pat.
No, it's good, and you bring up a good point. And the reason why we have the quad box is because we don't all have the same opinions. That's why he's asking. I appreciate that, Derek. You bring up something that is so important when we talk about trades. Look ahead for bye weeks. That's really, really important. I appreciate that you did that with all these players coming up here, because you don't want to trade away a guy that's already had a bye week and then run yourself into, say, 3 other ones coming up. Vice versa, you would like to have that. So I do appreciate that mode. Let's get back into it here, boys. We're going to kick off back with the St. Louis Rams and the Arizona Cardinals. 26-19, Rams come up with the win here. Thumbs up, true. Thumbs down, false. True or false? Puka Nacua is a top 12 wide receiver rest of season. Thumbs up or down? Oh my goodness. I'm actually going to go with a dub as well there. Obviously Puka's amazing, but the first game back with a full-on Cooper Kupp there, the tide turned big time. We'll see if that happens moving forward. But Bob, let's go to you here with the matchup takeaway.
Yeah, it's an easy one. This one's a layup. It's start your running backs against Arizona. We just saw what Kerryon Williams did. Honestly, this matchup has become insane. In DFS, get your guys in the lineup. Kerryon Williams, 20 carries, 158 yards, and 1 touchdown. The craziest part, 98% of that came in the second half. So he ran for 150 yards in the second half alone. Previous weeks, Joe Mixon, 81 yards. CMC 106 and 3 touchdowns. Tony Pollard 122 yards. So it's just been a great matchup. You got Kenneth Walker this week. Get him in your DFS lineups. He's going to be awesome. Then you have the Ravens, the Browns, and the Falcons. So the Browns is an issue. Jerome Ford is someone I'm kind of looking at as maybe a buy low candidate too, because he looked good against the 49ers. So definitely take a look there as well. But there is another player that kind of stood out too in a usage standpoint. And you want to talk about him, Derek? What's your thoughts about this game?
Yeah, guys, if you ever hear me again promote Zach Ertz, shut me down, kick me off the show, whatever you got to do. He was in my article last week. We talked about him on Sunday. He had a prime matchup lined up. And what happened? He gets outsnapped by Trey McBride, same number of targets, and he puts up a 2 for 22 receiving game. It was awful. I am off the Zach Ertz train for good. Don't anyone tell me otherwise. Especially you, Matt. I'm assuming you're not adding him this week.
I don't even know what you're talking. I don't know why I got dragged into this. I'm the only one that voted for Puka. You guys are shaming me for it. 3 emphatic thumbs down. All I'll say is, that contractually I'm obligated to say Puka's top 12. So I'm just going to finish there.
I love it. I am still voting for Julie Ertz. I'm still a fan of Julie Ertz. I just want to make that clear. All right, let's move on. Let's move on here to the next game. We have the Las Vegas Raiders upending the New England Patriots. The old, what was this, like a quadruple revenge game, I believe, for the Raiders to the Patriots here. 21-17. Once again, true or false, gentlemen? Thumbs up, true. Thumbs down, false. Devontae Adams is a top 12 wide receiver rest of season. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, we got a thumbs up all the way. I'm actually going to go down. I'm concerned about it. Jimmy G has a back issue. I don't think he's amazing, but he's good for Devontae Adams. And Jacoby Myers, folks, don't look now, but is on the heels absolutely for this Raiders offense here. So, Bob, we'll go to you again with the takeaway here from the game.
It's kind of similar to the last one. Start your running backs against the Raiders. Sky, you were hammering this home over the show on Sunday about Stevenson and getting him in your lineups, and sure enough, he came through, got into the end zone, caught a couple passes as well. The Patriots running back, 17 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions for 39 yards, and no one on the Patriots backfield was doing well. Previous weeks, AJ Dillon. When AJ Dillon gets 20 carries for 76 yards for a touchdown, you're doing something wrong. Then it's Josh Kelly, 17 for 65. Najee Harris, 19 for 65. Like, these aren't really great running backs this season. So you definitely want to get, and this is going to tie perfectly into what Matt said earlier. Who are they playing this week? The Bears. Deontay Foreman, Roschon Johnson. Whoever gets the nod, you want him. And I think Deontay Foreman's an underrated play this week, even if Roschon's back, because he could kind of fill that Khalil Herbert role. Then you have the Lions with David Montgomery based on his health. Craig Reynolds might be a guy that you look at. Then you have the Giants and the Jets as well. Derek, I know you want to talk about Jacoby Myers. Talk to us about what your takeaways are for this week.
Yeah. We've been, all of us in some fashion here or there, have been pushing him for the last few weeks. And, if there's any doubt that he's not a co-wide receiver one with Adams, he needs to be on every roster. Led the team again in targets, 5 for 61 and the touchdown. I mean, he is a magnet. He and Jimmy G, if Jimmy G's healthy, he just seems to target Myers. And so you've got to have him in your lineups. Obviously he's rostered everywhere now, but he's not even a flex play anymore. He's a starting wide receiver for me. Any other ads or waiver wire considerations for you, Matt, from this game?
No, I lost you guys for a minute. The internet crapped out on here at home, but I gave thumbs up to Devontae. Hopefully, you guys gave thumbs up too. I think that it will start to even out a little bit more, right? Once Myers proves himself, and Derek's right, he has proved himself. Defenses are going to have to decide what are they going to do play by play, not just we're going to shadow and shift a safety over to Devontae. Right now, Devontae's not complaining, but it's not going to be long before he starts to show his frustration. The guy is a legitimate top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. We need Jimmy G healthy, or we need the Raiders and dumbass Josh McDaniel to admit that it's Brian Hoyer gives them the better chance to win over Aiden O'Connell. So hopefully if Hoyer starts, those 2 wide receivers are really good plays. If O'Connell starts, I'm not sure I love either one of them. So, but I'm also with Derek. You start them both, and you hope for the best. Most likely because you don't have better options. So, I start both of them in all formats.
Brian Hoyer, 10 yards per attempt last week, folks.
Hey, that's a first down. I mean, that's moving the chains. You can't tell me Rich Gannon is not a better option for the formerly Oakland Raiders. I'll leave it at that. Ramondre
Jeff Hostetler.
Love it. Nice. I am not one to pat myself on the back too often, but when I can, I really look forward to it. And Ramondre Stevenson last week as my start of the week, I'm really stoked on. And it's not that I got it right. It's just I did my calculations and it actually worked out the way that I thought it was going to. And it went against the script of the NFL, which is hard to beat sometimes. Last week, I had mentioned that he needs to get the ball going and the checkdowns will be there. Certainly they were. He matched his season high with 6 targets, 5 catches, 24 yards, only 46 yards rushing. He's still terrible, but he did score because the Raiders can give it up. I like that a lot. So he was the running back 6 in PPR that week. So I'm going to trade for Ramondre Stevenson. It's not pretty. He's an RB2. Don't expect the upside, but he's running back 6 this week. He's RB 18 on the season. So he had a big boom. Looks like he could run on Buffalo a little bit. Obviously, it's going to be a shootout with Miami coming up. So those should be, passing opportunities for Ramondre again in those PPR leagues.
He also missed significant time in that game.
He did.
And didn't look like he was going to come back. He limped off the field. So that's running back 6 with missed time. And Derek, do you want to be the one to give Sky that one extra pat on the back and let him know what happened to our combined 1-5 team?
I don't know.
Okay. We started Rashee Rice Thursday. We love the points we got.
Mm-hmm.
If we start Ramondre, who was the coin flip, we win.
Well, look, all we need to put on the books, okay, is he outpaced Josh Jacobs by 6.5 fantasy points. All right. So I just want to make that clear that Josh Jacobs is bad. Moving forward here, Daniel has a question here. Matt, I'm going to go directly to you, and we're going to move on here to save some time. It's a waiver wire question. Do we drop Logan Thomas for Michael Mayer, who had a nice game for the Raiders? Just don't know if Washington will consolidate all of those targets with McLaurin again. They're facing the Giants coming up here. Do we drop Logan Thomas for Michael Mayer? Or are you going to stick with Logan Thomas?
I'm sticking with Logan Thomas, and Daniel actually sent a question before that. What about Cole Kmet for Meyer? I'm probably holding Kmet too. I want to see consistency from Meyer before I drop guys that I consider to be decent tight end starts right now. I don't know why Logan Thomas put up 1 for 2 yards. Again, of course, that's on Derek's and mine 1 and 5 team. So I don't get it. Tight end's a wasteland. I'm almost done talking about tight ends unless the name is Jonnu Smith.
Maybe if you guys could let us know your entire roster of that 1 and 5 team, we could just fade them weekly, and that would help.
You know what? I'm going to put it in the private chat, and you tell me why we're 1 and 5.
You got it. All right. Let's move on here to the Miami Dolphins. Another boat race here of the Carolina Panthers. No surprise. 42-21. They doubled them up. Carolina is also on bye coming up here. Week 6 versus the season. Tua is QB2 this week. Mostert is RB1 this week. Tyreek is RB1 this week. On the season as a whole, Tua is QB3, Mostert is RB2, and Tyreek is the number 1 wide receiver. I've never seen anything like this, where a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver are literally 1, 2, or 3 on a team. We've had stints of this. The Patriots back in the day had some of this. The Chiefs over the years have had a little bit of this. The Vikings with a good Dalvin Cook had a little bit of this, but this consistency 6 weeks in is pretty incredible for what the Dolphins are doing. Bob, let's go to you for the matchup takeaway.
Yeah, I think for the biggest thing for me in this game is that, start your number 1 wide receivers against the Dolphins. The Dolphins are just putting up so much points. It might not even be a bad matchup for wide receiver 1s, but honestly, at this point, Adam Thielen just had another monster game against this team. But even prior to Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, 6 for 120 and 3. Cortland Sutton, 8 for 91 and 1. Sorry, we got a little bit of a. There we go. All right. Even Devontae Parker had 6 for 57. It's just that the Dolphins are putting up so much points that garbage time counts for fantasy football. But then this week you have the Eagles, by the way, who are just going to be absolutely dominant. Then you have the Patriots. We just talked about Kendrick Bourne earlier. Could be another spot start to him. And then the Chiefs. I mean, that's Rashid Rice written all over it right there, folks. So definitely some good waiver wire pickups there too. Other than that, though, Derek, do you have any thoughts about player takeaways from this matchup?
Yeah, I would just say keep an eye on Chuba Hubbard and of course, Miles Sanders' injury situation. They're on bye this week, but coming out of the break, they've got Houston, Indy, and Chicago, all favorable running back matchups. So if Sanders is still out and Chuba's out there, he's going to be a good play for anyone who was lucky to get him last week. What about you, Sky? You got any trade fours out here? I mean, obviously, if you got any Dolphins, you're trading for Dolphins if you can. But
yeah,
what about Chuba Hubbard or even is Adam Thielen? Is he still available by trade? You think, or is he worth it?
I don't. He's worth it, and he's certainly a target. He's just not going to be attainable. I mean, Adam Thielen's not going to stop. The reality is, while he's healthy, this is going to continue. He's the only option there. Chuba Hubbard is nice. Again, you guys know I'm not a Miles Sanders guy. Here we are. Chuba Hubbard's just better than he is right now. Injuries or whatnot doesn't matter. It's not working out for Miles Sanders. So I guess he would be a pickup there. Matt doesn't seem to have anybody in this game either because, like, the discrepancy between the Miami players who are unattainable for trade and the Panthers players outside of Thielen who aren't really desired, I think is just quite the gap there. So, Matt, unless you have anything to add, we'll jump on to the next game.
No, I just answered a question for one of my readers, Citizen 5, and he asked, he just noticed that Chuba was available on his wire and asked, rest of season, do you like Chuba over Mason and Craig Reynolds? And I said, absolutely, I do.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I like that. Daniel has another question. We'll make this one quick here. Would y'all hold Hubbard through the bye week? He's clearly outproducing Sanders. So thumbs up, thumbs down, hold Chuba Hubbard through the bye week. I think it too. Yeah, and again, look, be careful with holding through the bye week, right? If it makes sense, you have room on your roster, do that. If you don't, drop them and then go find them later on in the week, maybe, and beat the rest of your teammates. But you're going to have to be careful about that. Okay, let's move on to the Jets and the Philadelphia Eagles. The second biggest, obviously the biggest upset, unfortunately, was my Niners getting upset here by the Browns. But the other upset, which the Jets are turning the corner here big time, but the Eagles get upended as well, 20-14 versus the Jets. The Jets are also on bye. Would you rather have for the rest of the season, gentlemen? We're going to go round robin quickly. Garrett Wilson, Devonta Smith. Bob, we'll start with you. Rest of season, Garrett Wilson, Devonta Smith.
Yeah, I was just curious to see their schedules here. Let's see. Rest of season. Let me get there. I got
Devonta Smith for me.
Yeah, let me just pull this up here.
Yeah, I go Smith without even looking at the schedule.
I would go Smith as well. Jets have a really tough rest of season out wide schedule.
Bob or Derek?
Yeah, and I was actually going to talk about him as well because I do have some concerns there. But in that situation, I will go Devonta Smith. He's getting still getting plenty of targets, double-digit targets. It's just not producing right now. You've got to think that's going to change. In Philadelphia, offense just seems like they're a step off. And we all expect them to right that ship, and Devonta Smith should be right in the middle of it. So yeah, I'm going Smith as well.
And not only are they a step off, but they seem to be disjointed in the coaching and front office staff, which is evident by the signing of who today? Julio Jones. Who?
Julio Jones?
I honestly brought this up, but I brought this up a bunch of times previously. It was weird, but Devonta Smith was not good last season when it was Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, and Jalen Hurts. If you look at the stats with the splits, he was like wide receiver 30. He wasn't like a top 24 receiver. And I didn't know what to think of it when I was looking into it because he went off with Gardner Minshew. In the 2 games with Minshew last year, he went off like 25 PPR points in 2 games, and then he played very well without Goddard. So it is what it is, but if you drafted him, you can't trade him, and his rest of season schedule is average, but it's like his beginning of the season's been average. So I think he's just got to be a flex wide receiver 3 play. In good matchups, you start him. In bad matchups, you fade him, because in the bad matchups, A.J. Brown's usually the one that emerges, unless there's some type of shadow coverage or a team takes away the number 1 that we know about. So join the Friday show and Sunday Live, and we'll tell you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Dallas Goedert's going to be my trade 4 candidate. I had him as a trade away about 3 weeks ago because Devonta Smith was going off. But now that everybody's healthy, it seems like Dallas Goedert might be that number 2 option there. And I do like that. He's, catching touchdowns. He's moving the ball. Again, with anybody that's going to have the option to have 6-7 targets at the tight end position, 3-4 receptions, 30-40 yards, that makes them tight end 12. If they catch a touchdown, they're top 6. Bob, any other mentions here with the matchup takeaway?
Yeah, it's just the outside receivers against Philadelphia. It's been constant. And they now Bradley Roby, who they signed and was playing well, got hurt. They just keep getting injuries. And so Garrett Wilson, 8 for 90 this week. Previous weeks, Puka Nacua, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, you name it. It's done it. Now they get the Dolphins. Forget about it. Waddle's in. Tyreek Hill, get him in your DFS lineups. Commanders next. McLaurin looks like he's emerging, so he could be a really good play. Then Cowboys before the bye week. So really target that matchup for outside receivers.
Man, Sunday night for that one. That one's going to be a lot of fun. Sunday and Monday Night Football coming up this week. Super fun. We got the Eagles and the Dolphins and the Niners and the Vikings. All right, let's go to the Bucs and the Lions. The Lions remain incredibly hot. They moved to 5-1, 20-6 over the Buccaneers. Jared Goff, QB3. The Lions are the best team in the NFL? ? Second best point differential in the NFC behind only the 49ers. So we won't get into it too deep, but I'm not sure I could name 5 teams better right now in the entire NFL than the Detroit Lions. Bob, will go to you first with the game takeaway.
On cue, here is my faded mirror, but it's really fade the running backs against the Lions defense. It's been constant. Now the Buccaneers have not been good at all running the football, but this isn't just a Bucs thing. 13 carries for 35 yards. Previous weeks, no running backs ever this season have gone over 50 rushing yards against Detroit this year. Only one running back finished in the top 20. That was Kenneth Walker. with the Seattle game. So it's been absolutely dreadful. They got the Ravens this week, fade those running backs. They got the Raiders and Josh Jacobs. Then they have a bye, and then they have a real tough test against Austin Eckler, but fade running backs against the Lions. Now, I know you want to talk about the other side of the football here. Derek, you want to talk a little bit about Craig Reynolds? What's your thoughts about him?
Yeah, Craig Reynolds, he had to come in when Montgomery went out with an injury. He rushed 10 times for 15 yards. So even the Lions didn't appear like they were overly confident in Reynolds. They kept allowing Goff on the road, by the way, to continue slinging the ball. So it appears that Jahmyr Gibbs is trending towards playing this week. So that's a positive, and I think you roll him out no matter what. But keep an eye on that situation. I think, Matt, you probably have Craig Reynolds. You want to say something about him as a waiver wire ad, huh?
I just think that if Gibbs doesn't play a very good football team, you should start the running back. If you've got injuries and buys, do I love Craig Reynolds? No. Do I love the block he threw to Spring, Amon-Ra, St. Brown? I absolutely do love that, and I could watch that another 15 to 20
It's a gamer.
times.
Do you know
It
who
just
else
would not get old.
You know who else loves that stuff? Dan Campbell. That's going to get him on the field. That's the kind of play that's going to make Craig Reynolds start over Gibbs next week, and that's why you're going to want to play him as an RB2 right there.
Yeah, hot take right there. Hot take.
Hot take. Bad camera.
Third string running back over the first round draft pick.
Yeah. Well, hey man, that's what it's been. Unfortunately, when they're both healthy there. Let's move on here to the final game. Or I'm sorry, we got the final game of the Sunday slate, and then obviously we got the night games. Tennessee here, upended by the Baltimore Ravens. That was the early game there out in London. 24-16. Tennessee also on a bye this week, one of our 6 teams. Ryan Tannehill carted off with an ankle injury. Has a bye week to recover, but not looking good. I believe it's a high ankle sprain, which we don't love no matter what. He's not very mobile like he used to be, but I don't think it matters. Malik Willis came in as the backup there. General question, you guys can touch on this as we go along. Are we concerned about Derrick Henry? He did have a nice kind of a wildcat touchdown, but not as dominant. And my boy Tyjae Spears is out snapping Derrick Henry. More snaps on the field. And it's just started to turn a little bit like DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry many years ago. So I don't think we, get rid of Derrick Henry per se, but he's not as dominant as he was last year. Bob, we'll start with you here. What is your game takeaway?
I think you can start and end with Bob, right? Bob's the Derrick Henry truther.
Yeah. So
maybe we just, the 3 of us mute. We take our headphones out. We let Bob do what he's going to do here. This is going to be loud. It's going to be passionate, and it's probably good. I say just, Bob, get it out.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to have to take my takes a little blurry today, folks. I will say this. Tyjae Spears is legit, and he looks like he's shot out of a cannon. It's kind of like obviously Derrick Henry's not Zeke Elliott, but it reminds me of the Tony Pollard situation, the Jalen Warren situation. The team just has a very good young running back, and we saw this 5 years ago when DeMarco Murray was the Titans' star running back, and then next thing you know, they started splitting work with Derrick Henry. So Henry's still good, but he doesn't get a lot of passing game work. Now you're dealing with Ryan Tannehill's injury. They have the bye week to get healthy, but overall, I'm not overly excited about Derrick Henry's rest of the season. He's not going to get you 20 carries anymore like he used to because they don't need to do it. But there is one huge caveat. If the Titans get to 500, for example, and now you start getting to late November, early December, they're going to ride the big boy. I guarantee you that. So they're losing right now. I don't see they have a lot of initiative to do that. But anyway, just another matchup takeaway for this game. I just want to talk about the outside receivers against Tennessee. Zay Flowers, 6 for 50 and 1. This is an air yards defense. Any vertical threat on the outside, play them against this team. They have the bye. Then they have Drake London, George Pickens, and the Steelers, Mike Evans and company, and Calvin Ridley. So those are guys you're going to want to play against this Titans D. Any thoughts, Derek, on your end for a player's perspective?
Yeah, so I was in the other side of the backfield. Justice Hill, he's been starting to supplant Gus Edwards for snap shares. But then this week we saw a complete reversal. Gus had 61% to Hill's 39%. I mean, neither running back did much of anything. But it is the Titans too, and if your name's not Zach Moss, you're not getting yards on the ground against the Titans. So I'm not really too worried about the production of either one of them, but I did notice that the snap share was probably almost opposite of what I expected. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on moving forward. Matt, your thoughts from this game?
Just throw Zay Flowers the football more. And can we stop with Odell Beckham every time he catches a pass? He wants to celebrate. He wants to push people. He wants to talk shit. Go away. You're the current NFL Antonio Brown. I'm done. Go away. I'd rather see Nelson Aguilar in the Pro Bowl than Odell Beckham Jr. in the huddle. Go away. You're just a nuisance.
Nice Nelson Aguilar drop. Shouts out to Nelson Aguilar for not getting any rep on any other programs but here at Razzball. So once again, you come for the analysis, you stay for the Nelson Aguilar takes. I love that. Matt, I'm going to throw you a shout out here. Zay Flowers is a trade for candidate for me this week. He had his best fantasy output so far. Wide receiver 14 in PPR. He had 8 targets, 6 receptions, just 50 yards, but he finally caught his first NFL touchdown. We love to see that. And Lamar Jackson is also a trade for. He's not going to be cheap, obviously, but he's playing much better in NFL standards than he is in fantasy. 2 weeks ago, they had 7 drops. 2 of them were touchdowns, literally touchdowns, and the wide receivers dropped them. This week, he just had some kind of batted balls. Tennessee kept the ball away from him with Derrick Henry. That's what they do to play. Per Pro Football Focus, Lamar Jackson is the second-rated quarterback on the year. Can anyone guess who number 1 is? Just throw out a name. You're not going to guess him.
Jared Goff.
Jared Goff nailed it, so I was wrong. Well done. Jared Goff is number 1. Lamar Jackson is number 2 per Pro Football Focus. Over the last 3 weeks, it's been Lamar Jackson as number 1. So he's playing much better. Should be an uptick there. Zay Flowers also, I think, would be on the cheap, and he's starting to ascend. He's got the Lions, the Cardinals, the Seattle Seahawks, Cleveland Browns. Don't love the schedule, but he is clearly the number 1 option there. And Mark Andrews is just not as dominant as he was last year, so I like that a lot. 2 more games, boys. Let's get through it here. Quick reminder to everybody still paying attention. We appreciate you. We do have a quick question here. I'm going to jump into that in just 1 second for you, Cohen. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. We're going to be combining our episodes again. Monday, Tuesday will be a package deal moving forward. You can also find all of our articles for free on football.razzball.com. So make sure you go check that out. Use all of our tools. Bob is updating the slot versus wide analysis as we speak. That'll be ready for you as well heading into the next week. Before we proceed, boys, we got a quick question here. Trade Stevenson for Mike Evans. Cohen, in the future, please make sure that you let us know if this is half or full PPR. That really helps us out. But let's go to half PPR. Boys, Derek, we're going to start with you. Stevenson, Mike Evans, trade.
Well, yeah, it's hard to make this decision without seeing the roster and if he's got the running back depth to do so. I mean, if he's got Bijan and another running back that he can afford to, then yeah, I'm making the deal. But if this depletes his running back core, then no, I'm not.
Bob?
No. Keep it Stevenson in this one. Stevenson has the second best rest of season adjusted line yard matchup ranking. Tampa Bay has the 3rd toughest rest of season out wide schedule. So I'm going to go with Stevenson here.
Running backs are Breece Hall and Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. Well, let me amend mine. No, do not make the deal.
Matt?
Yeah, shout out to Cohen, one of my readers, right? He's around every week. I haven't seen a question from him this week, and I will sue him in court if he puts his questions here and doesn't put them in the article.
That's what we want. Intimidation. That helps. Thanks.
Yeah, it's the only way I'm going to approach a decent Christmas bonus the way Bob's been pinching pennies. So I'm again, right? So sometimes, I think what you get from me, right? I'll be self-deprecating here. It's way more about opinion for me than it is analytics. When Bob or Derek throws analytics like Bob just did about Ramondre having the 3rd best running back schedule moving forward and for the rest of the season, second,
Yes,
yep.
correct.
3rd toughest
Yeah,
for Mike Evans.
Who's number 1? Who do you guys think's number 1?
Oh, it's
Probably
probably
David
Detroit.
Montgomery.
It's a fun name.
Detroit.
It's probably a guy you can get to. Isaiah Pacheco.
Nice.
Interesting.
I was gonna
Funny
go
how they have the
Spring.
best, the easiest schedule, even though they won the Super Bowl. Isn't that interesting?
Well, let's just All right.
But yes, so I'm with Bob. I am going to hold Stevenson, and he says his receivers are Kupp, AJ, and Waddle. Absolutely, do not need to deal for Mike Evans.
Yeah, don't make that deal.
Nope.
I totally agree. You could also use some depth right? We have the Colts bye coming up. The Jets are on a bye. So you're just going to, I think you need to use Stevenson and move forward there. So, Cohen, appreciate it. Thank you. Make sure you go check in with Matt so we don't have any drastic measures here in the next couple of weeks. All right, 2 more games here, boys. We got the Buffalo Bills somehow getting by the New York Football Giants 14-9 in this game. The Bills have the highest point differential in the AFC, plus 84. Should have lost this game straight up. Refs or not, the Giants had an opportunity to win this game, and they just didn't. Unfortunately, Bob, you're the house Giants fan. Feel free to vent here if you'd like.
No, it's just ridiculous. Like, obviously, the guy not only didn't turn his head, but he also grabbed his, like, the definition of pass interference or illegal contact is when they don't turn their head around and then they also pull you down. So when you do both, it cancels out apparently to refs and they don't call it. So apparently 2 + 2 equals 0 because that's how it works in the NFL. So dumb. It doesn't make any sense. I got Tyrod Taylor doing his thing. Ridiculous. But anyway, my point is the Giants should have won. The refs sucked. It is what it is. But anyway, for this game specifically, the Giants offensive line, if you want to get me on a tangent, actually looked normal. They actually looked average. Thank you, Brian Daboll, for figuring it out. I appreciate you. But the biggest takeaway from this game is that the Bills' run D is vulnerable. You could take advantage of that matchup. Saquon Barkley off the medical bench or whatever the thing is, whatever. 24 carries, 93 yards. Previous weeks, Travis Etienne, 26 carries, 136. Devin Achane, 101 yards. Brian Robinson, 10 carries for 70 yards. Okay. This Bills run defense is something you could attack in games. You have the Patriots coming up. We just talked about Ramondre Stevenson. Keep riding him in your lineups. I like that. Then you have the Bucks, whatever that backfield is. Then you have the Bengals with Joe Mixon. And then the Broncos. Hopefully by then we'll know if Javante's the one or if it's McLaughlin. But any other thoughts here on your end, Derek, for player takeaways?
Yeah, well, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I did note that Latavius Murray and James Cook essentially split snaps this week. Do we think that Latavius Murray stock is going up or down or is neutral? Is he going up?
Yeah, I don't see anybody actually playing Latavius Murray just because, but at the same time, and I'll stay off my high horse on the James Cook thing. But I kind of saw this coming. I'm concerned about it.
Yeah, well, with bye weeks and injuries, I mean, he might be a waiver wire ad, right, Matt?
I have him in my article as an ad because I can't figure out what Sean McDermott's doing with James Cook. When Cook touched the ball, he looked pretty good. But running backs, if you watch football at all, right, high school, college, pro, it doesn't matter. Running backs need volume, and they get lathered up and they start to produce. Saquon did not look great at the beginning of that football game. Kyron Williams did not look good at the beginning of that Rams football game. But I tell you what, when they got moving and they started to get a feel for the game and the line and the defense, they turn into better football players. So I don't know. I can't figure out, right? I used to think McVay and LaFleur and McDaniels and Belichick all hated your fantasy football teams. I stand by that, but I think maybe Sean McDermott does too. I don't know. Maybe he's the fifth.
Well, they did say on the broadcast that James Cook is having troubles in pass pro. And the number one thing you need to do is keep Josh Allen upright. And if that's true, they have Latavius Murray. That's why Murray's getting a lot of passing game work. That's why he's in on third downs, because he is pass pro. You would think James Cook would be this great pass catcher. He should be in on third downs, but it's Latavius Murray in pass pro situations because he can block. So that's something that James Cook needs to improve on. But if he doesn't, he's not going to be on the field. Josh Allen's the most important player for that franchise. And if they can't trust you to protect him, you're not going to be on the field every snap.
Yeah. We have Saquon Barkley, 24 carries for 93 yards. Looks good in the box score. His longest run was 34 yards. I'm not one of those, if that play didn't happen, then blah, blah, blah. But if that play doesn't happen, we're looking at 23 carries for 50-plus yards. Not efficient, right? So just obviously he's getting the work. We want that. I'm not worried about Saquon, but keep it into perspective a little bit as we move forward. All right, boys, final game here. Let's move into the Chargers blowing another lead and blowing another win here from my boy Justin Herbert, who should be 6-0, but I'll leave it at that. The Dallas Cowboys are on a bye this week. They get the win 20-17. The Los Angeles Chargers, 6 losses by 3 or less points in the last 2 years. Only the Denver Broncos have more with 7. This one, just as a Herbert fan and a Charger fan in general, this was a tough one to watch here. I think they were the better team for the whole game. But the point is, Dak did actually play quite well, and the Cowboys got the W here. So, Bob, we'll start with you with the takeaways.
I think the biggest one for me is that the Cowboys secondary is no longer as daunting without Diggs.
No,
and Stephon Gilmore is another one of those elite cornerbacks that has kind of aged out of being elite. He's no longer that. He did make a really nice play on Herbert at the end of the game, but his PFF grades this season have been average at best. So now that you take Diggs out, who was the number 1 rated corner on the Dallas Cowboys, we've seen over the last few weeks, guys they haven't even faced anybody yet. I mean, last week it was Keenan Allen. Josh Palmer, by the way, I think he's a trade for, because if you watch that game, he had 3 big catches called back on plays that had no impact on the play. The offensive lineman wandered 1 half step away on the offensive. They called it like a 30-yard pass back. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But anyway, Marquise Brown, 5 for 61 and 1 over the last few weeks too. So I think, of course, now they have the Rams. The Rams are going to go off. Then they have the Eagles. The Eagles should be able to go off. The Giants, again, maybe Slayton can finally get it going in that game. But then the Panthers, Adam Thielen, fire him up. Not stressed about this matchup. Anybody else? Derek, any thoughts from a player perspective?
No, you mentioned Josh Palmer, and that's who I would be looking at as well if I was, either if by chance he's available, probably not, but or trading for, just like Sky said. But yeah, Josh, he's coming around. He's going to continue to get his targets, and he's going to be a player that. Plus he's passed his by, so he's going to be a player that you're going to want to roster if you can.
Matt, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. I wrote up Cooks and Gallup before the Monday night game because I figure at a certain point one of them has to do something. They don't look very good. Cooks did. He scored a touchdown, but I don't know. Those 2 players are better than what they're showing now. You don't need to buy low. You just need to not add at this point, even though I've got them in my article. I mean, you have to be way down on buys and injuries to even consider one of them right now. And, Dak had happy feet all night. I think the Chargers did outplay them, but he made plays, especially the run pass option where he went for 23 or 33 yards for the touchdown. That was the best play of the night. And I don't want to talk about the Keenan Allen touchdown because that cost us our victory. So
yeah, Keenan's ridiculous.
Just one thing I want to add too. On the broadcast, they did say that Dak Prescott talked about Michael Gallup and wanted getting him going, but he did bring up the fact that he feels that Gallup's still in his own head with his knee. So it's something mental with his knee injury that's still preventing him from making sharp cuts, getting out of breaks. He had 10 targets last night, turned it into 3 catches. So that's not good, but there is something there. Maybe over the second half, it's definitely worth monitoring. If he's going to get 7, 8, 9 targets in a game, at some point, if he gets it going, that confidence comes back, he could be an asset down the stretch.
All right, boys, that wraps up the games for the week. Again, next week we'll have 3 less games because of the bye weeks, of course. But let's get into it here. We got a final question here from Not33. Would you trade Higbee and Mixon for Ridley and Kelsey? Derek, we'll start with you.
No, read that again.
I'm sorry, Higbee,
Mixon, and Ridley.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. Thank you. Higbee, Mixon, and Ridley for Kelsey. Good catch. My bad.
Yeah. Now, even if you go down further, he gave us his roster there just for us to look at. I don't think this is a really good trade here. In fact, if I was the Kelsey owner, I'm probably not making the trade either, even for those 3, because I'm going to probably have to cut 2 players to make it happen. So. No, I'm not liking that, and then I don't really like it for Nod either. He's got his rosters, I would say, is a little bit thin anyway. So I would want to make sure I keep as many weapons as I can, and especially Ridley and of that bunch, he's the one I like. So no, I'm not making this trade. Either way, either owner, I'm not making the trade.
Bob.
Yeah, that's tough because all right, let's say he makes the deal. You got Mahomes with the Kelsey stack, which is nice. Then your running backs are Etienne and Pollard. But Akers is not really. We're not going to rely on Akers right now. So it's Etienne and Pollard. That's it. So that's all you have, and so
and the Cowboys are on a bye.
Yeah, so I don't think you have the depth to make the deal, unfortunately. But that being said, after the bye week, if you know Pollard's done after this, where the bye weeks hit, I actually don't mind it down the stretch. Like once the bye week's clear, I would just ride with my studs anyway. Give me the Kelsey Mahomes stack, but maybe you have to wait a little bit on this one.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't love it right now, but I love it long term. Again, if not is 6-0, make the deal, right? And then ride the Mahomes and Kelsey stack and just don't watch football this Sunday. But otherwise, I think you're giving up too much. And by the way, I think there's better options for Naut's team. Get rid of Robert Woods, get rid of Dalvin Cook, and you've got some options on the waiver wire. I mean, would you rather have Josh Downs this week than Robert Woods, right? Robert Woods is on a bye, so of course you would. And you could go get Roshan Johnson or Dante Foreman or Craig Reynolds and relieve Dalvin Cook of his paycheck. So I think those are more appropriate moves this week.
Hey, I want to just hop up over here. Question. You can't see me, but I'm just going to hop up real quick, guys. Hey, so I'll be like from Home Improvement, the neighbor here.
Wilson.
I want to ask Wilson. There you go. Oh, hey, that's awkward. Imagine I was just topless underneath there, Scott. You can't do that. Anyway, you keep bringing up Dobbs. What's the deal here? Is he a streamer this week? What's the deal? What's going on here? Talk to me. As a guy who has Brock Purdy that I'm not sure about, what are we talking about Dobbs so much for?
No, I said Josh Downs.
Oh, Josh Downs. Okay,
Yes.
Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I have Josh
Keep it
Dobbs
moving.
as like my honorable mention for quarterbacks. I'd rather stream Stafford this week. I'd rather stream who was the other guy I had in there?
What about Geno?
Howell and Stafford would be the two top streamers for me.
Over Purdy?
I think I start both of them over Purdy this week.
All right, boys. We got 4 questions here they're trade related. We want to welcome everybody in the 11th hour here to the show. We're gonna spend about 2 more minutes on each one of these. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Just a reminder, we do kick these off at 6 p.m. Pacific. That's 9 p.m. Eastern time. It is helpful to us if you know you're gonna have a question, you tune into the show, that you can drop the question in early. We'll get to them as quickly as possible, but that way we don't necessarily have a bunch of the back end here, but we're happy to answer these as they come through. Beach, what's up, bud? Good evening. Is Burrow for Waddle a fair trade? The team with Waddle has Derek Carr. Let's go move here. So basically trade Burrow, acquire Waddle. Derek, start with you.
Unless I really need wide receiver depth, I'm keeping Burrow.
Bob?
I'm keeping Burrow. I think he's going to start going off.
Maddie?
Yeah, I'm keeping Burrow, and I love Waddle. So that ought to tell you something. I'm keeping Burrow.
Totally agree. Beach, always good to hear from you. Daniel, tuning back in here. Would you prioritize Zach Evans from the Rams over one of the 49ers guys? We talked about Mitchell and Mason earlier. Matt, we'll go to you directly for this one. Would you prioritize Zach Evans of the Rams over the 49ers?
Yes, with McCaffrey trending towards playing this week, or at least only missing 1 week, I like Zach Evans. Now, here's the deal. And I use this line in my article almost every week. Temper your expectations. These guys are third string running. Here's how you figure out if you love Zach Evans this week. He's the backup to Ronnie Rivers. So he's not going to do much for you. I see Stafford throwing the ball 45 times this weekend.
Wow, nice.
Because he's got Coop. And you know what? And we're going to rewind all the way back to you guys giving Puka the thumbs down. If you didn't watch the game, you don't know that he dropped a touchdown.
I saw him drop a touchdown.
Okay. I don't need it. I don't need you to mention it again. I just need you to realize that it's a totally different box score if he catches that pass.
Absolutely is.
True.
And I'm concerned about it rest of season. That's all. To be top 12, we'll see what happens. But once Devontae Adams falls out, there will be more room for Puka Nacua.
Okay.
Let's get back into it here. Gentlemen, first time, long time. Shouts out to Gorilla Kid 47. First time here, fellows. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. So Deontay Johnson comes back off of IR. We haven't talked about him in a month. Deontay Johnson, the Pittsburgh Steelers, coming back off of IR this week here. He has Ford, Roshan Johnson, Josh Palmer, and Tank Dell. Who should we drop? Derek, we'll start with you.
Well, is the right answer Deontay Johnson? I might drop Deontay. But no, coming out with a concussion, probably Tank Dell. He's the drop.
Matt?
Probably my drop as well as Tank Dell. I'm not dropping Roshan. I'm not dropping Josh Palmer. As you guys talked about, now's the time to go trade for Josh Palmer. And I don't see dropping the number one running back in Cleveland either. So it's probably Tank Dell. Now, don't look back. I always tell my readers, don't look back. Once you drop Tank Dell, do not watch him get scooped up by somebody. And then by God and his holy grace, do not watch the box score for Tank Dell.
Yeah. Bob?
I want to go back to the previous question and say that don't be surprised if Darrell Henderson gets a lot of work. He's got a lot of history with Sean McVay. He's just been signed back to that team. It just seems like the Cardinals situation all over again. Zach Evans seems like a trap, in my opinion. The other for this question, Deontay has the toughest rest of season out wide schedule here. Honestly, if I'm dropping anybody, it's probably going to be Tank Dell, unfortunately. It is a lot of inconsistencies there. Maybe even CJ Stroud hits the rookie wall. I don't know. But, yeah, this is a tough one. But I don't think I could – I don't have the balls to drop Deontay Johnson, but I love the call there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm going to go the other way a little bit here. I'm going to drop Jerome Ford. He's RB20. He's already had his bye. I do like both of those things. But Kareem Hunt came in a big way against the 49ers and has more of that passing downs. Also, this is without Deshaun Watson. Again, the Niners got blindsided. Great defensive scheme. They got injuries and they got beat. I don't see Jerome Ford in a lot of positive game scripts. So for me, I like Tank Dell, and I like him coming back from the injury, and I like the upside that he brings. So for me personally, I'm going to hang on to Tank Dell. And Gorilla Kid, thanks so much for finally tuning in with us, man. It's great to have a new comment there.
Maybe one thing you could try to do is a 2-for-1. You know, obviously try to get maybe not two of those guys, maybe one of your better players and one of those guys that get an upgrade. So you don't have to just drop Tank Dell. See if you can package 2-for-1. Then you can move Deontay into your regular lineup and you don't have to drop anybody. So see if there's any trades you can make out there. Ask around, see if there's a 2-for-1 you can make.
Quick thoughts here. Last question. We're going to get out of here. Camden, the Colts fan, 4-2, 10-team PPR league, super flex. All right. So you guys can see all of his players there. Wants to upgrade at running back. What can we possibly do? Derek, I'm going to start with you here as Bob and Matt read the rest of the schedule here. And we want to upgrade at running back. So is there anybody we can maybe trade away, and who are you considering?
Yeah, let me look at these names. I mean, the wide receivers are pretty good. I would say, I mean, Anthony Richardson, you probably don't need him anymore. If you've got a Colts fan and someone thinks that he might come back, maybe you could package him with a wide receiver. But other than that, I think I would just I'd probably drop Richardson and grab a running back off of waivers. I like the rest of the team.
Who's J-Mo? What am I missing?
I don't know. I actually don't have a clue.
J-Mo.
Caden, you got to give us some info here. Honestly, I don't even know who I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, who's J-Mo?
Wait, why wouldn't we get J-Mo? That's silly. Bob, what do you
that's who I would drop. I would drop the player that's not in the NFL.
I have no idea.
Jordan Montgomery from the Texas Rangers. Oh, Jameson Williams.
Okay.
J-Mo, like Jameson, the liquor.
Oh,
they call
man.
it J-Mo.
See,
all right.
I'm going to go with J. Will. That's a J. Will situation.
J-Mo.
That's okay. Go ahead.
All right. Okay.
Bob, who we dropping? Who do we want to upgrade with?
Well, we're not dropping anybody. Just he's looking for a trade, right? He doesn't talk about dropping anybody. Yeah, I think I'm under the situation where it's harder to acquire running backs. It really is. You got to look at all the teams that have depth. This might be a situation where you have to trade maybe an A.J. Brown to get a solid, like an Alvin Kamara type player, because you have Lamb, Pittman, Zay Jones, Hopkins. You have all these other guys on your roster you can play. So I'm not saying Brown for Kamara 1-for-1. I'm just trying to give an example of you might need to dangle your best receiver to get a huge upgrade at running back, because right now Pierce, Cook, Roshan are not getting it done on a consistent basis. So you have to look at the drop-off from maybe even if it's Lamb. Maybe you trade Lamb for an Alvin Kamara type. But the other team needs to have 4 really good running backs at least for him to accept that deal. So it's always tough to do that, but I think you have to dangle one of your better receivers to get the running back you need to make it worth it.
Matt, any additional questions before we get out of here?
Nope.
Got it. All right, everybody. We're up to a buck 30. Appreciate everyone joining in for the combo episode. Let us know in the comments how you like this format. We're trying to mix it up a little bit. We really enjoy doing the quad box with the four of us. It's a lot of fun for us on the back end, and we only get to do that on Sunday mornings. So we're excited to do that for you and want to kind of combine some episodes. And a lot of it's information so we can pack it early in your week before waivers come up and trade targets. So if you like that, give us a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that bell and subscribe if you haven't already. And tell your friends. Otherwise, we would get out of here. Let's do a round robin quick. Any last thoughts here? Derek, we'll start with you.
No, well, I mean, this week, again, we went through 6 teams on bye, so there's going to be some tough decisions. Stick with us all week, and we'll give you the help you need to make the right rosters decisions.
Maddie?
2 things. Can we agree that we are going to call beach the way we do cheese? Can we do that with beach?
Sure. Beach.
All right. And number 2, Sky, on Tuesdays, we usually have a guy from Pittsburgh that comes in and sees us. Can you remember his handle? We say it at least 4 times. It's great. It's itty. It's
itty bitty South City 650.
That's it. I miss him.
Dude. That was right off my play sheet right here on the wristband. Just
I love
number 6, itty bitty 650. I love it. All right, cool.
Itty bitty 650. I miss him tonight.
I do too. He'll be back, I'm sure. We appreciate it. Yep. And I want to make sure that everybody goes to football.razzball.com to catch all of our articles. My trade article will drop first thing in the morning. Everybody else's is out and ready to go. And we will catch you on Sunday. Bob, run us out here and let everyone know where they can find us on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, make sure you follow us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. And, of course, make sure you jump over to Razzball.com. We also have the podcast on the audio side. If you're ever going for a run, jump on to the we have Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are everywhere across the board. Want to thank all my co-hosts today. Go follow them at Twitter. They're all on the screen. But we are out of here, folks.